Hi, welcome to Two for the Price of One. Integrate language and content. Hi, I'm your presenter today. My name is Jan Holter-Kiddock, and welcome, Välkommen. God morgon, god morgon. Vi är här och jag är glad. God morgon till er. Do. So thank you for joining me. The reason I chose this topic comes from an experience I had in the Spanish classroom. And there I was teaching Spanish for seniors, and they had been in our Spanish program since middle school. I'm about to start the unit on Spain and the Spanish Civil War. I'm going to study that famous Picasso mural, Guernica. And I naively asked my students, ¿Qué sabemos de España? What do we know about Spain? Now remember, they've been in our Spanish program since middle school, about 1,000 hours of instruction. So I expected to fill the board with all kinds of information. But whoa, Nellie, that's not what happened. Think about what might happen in your classroom. Yeah, I got answers like Madrid is the capital, running of the bulls, or name of a famous pop singer or an athlete. I didn't get anything that showed that they had a deep understanding of who were the people in the world that spoke this language that they had been studying all these years. What I got were answers to Trivial Pursuit. So I set out to change that. I started working with my students to teach more content. And I'll date myself. I've been in the education since the 80s. And every year that I teach, or I should say every decade that I teach, the students know less and less about the world. This is a concern to me that the students aren't world savvy. They know a language, but they don't know anything about the people and the places where that language is spoken. They are simply lacking the background knowledge. And so, oh no, what can we do? I realized that I could be an agent of change in my language classroom. I could be part of the solution to that by teaching more content and not waiting until the upper levels, because we're pretty good at teaching the content at the upper levels. Traditionally, all across the country, levels 3 and above, we're teaching some very meaty and deep cultural concepts. But what about levels 1 and 2? Could we start some background knowledge information in levels 1 and 2 so that, you know, the statistic halfway across the country, all across the country, halfway through our programs after level 2, 50% of our students are leaving our programs. And so we're missing an opportunity. So I have a goal then in my instruction that I want two for the price of one. I want world savvy intelligence. Of course, I want my students to have the proficiency skills to be able to communicate with their peers. But I also want them to have the knowledge of understanding how the world works. They seem to lack a sense of geographic awareness, historical perspective. They just simply don't have that. And so I use what is called content-based instruction. That may be a term that you're familiar with. It's used by our colleagues in immersion programs. That is, that instead of directly teaching the language in an immersion program, the classroom instruction of whatever topic it is. If it's third grade, they're teaching third grade science, third grade math, third grade social studies, but doing it all in a language that the students are acquiring at the same time. So they're learning content and learning a language at the same time. Content-based instruction. We don't tend to think about that very much in the world language classroom. We seem to have this idea that first we have to have a couple of years of language instruction, and then we can start teaching some content. But there's another wave of pedagogy going on in Europe and has been going on for some time. They use this acronym, which I really like, Content and Language Integrated Learning, CLIL. I like that acronym because it says exactly what it is. You're teaching language and you're teaching content, and the students are getting two for the price of one. And hey, if you can get two for the price of one, why settle for 50%? But how do you do that? That sounds great, Jan. How do you do that? Well, some different things have to happen. You have to have the magic trifecta, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. In order to do content and language integrated learning, number one, you've got to be teaching in the target language. And as we have the challenge set out by our profession to stay 90% in the target language. Okay, but beyond just teaching in the target language, it has to be language presented in a way that it's comprehensible to the learners. Because this is what we know about language acquisition. We acquire language when we understand it. So it's not just being exposed to language and just like bada bing, it magically goes into our students' heads and they start to speak. It has to be comprehensible for our brain to make sense of it, to then process it in our brains, and then with some support, we're able to start speaking and using the language. And now I'm going to add a third element, learn new information at the same time. What I mean by new information, learn like geography or biographies or history or cultural concepts that pertain to the target cultures. So I want to teach about the cultures where the language is spoken at the same time that I'm teaching the language. Well, that sounds great, but how do you do that? Is magic? No, it's not magic. We're going to look at the basics of language acquisition. Okay, so I'm going to put an image on the screen here, okay, and ask you a couple of questions. And then I want you to stop and think about this for a moment. You might even pause the video, think about this, jot down some ideas, or if you're watching along with some colleagues, have a little discussion here. Okay, what does this graphic tell you about language acquisition? And secondly, what are the implications for classroom language instruction? Think about that. Pause the video. And then when you're ready, come back. Okay, what the image tells me as I created that infographic is that you've got to put a lot of input into the sponge to get a little bit of output out. So we know this. We know that our students' proficiency levels, that they can read and understand at a level higher than they are able to produce in writing. They can listen and understand at a higher level than they are able to produce in their own speaking. So that means they need lots and lots of input going into their sponge, but it just doesn't go in and then out automatically. It's got to have time to absorb. It's got to have time to work it in and then release out. So a lot of times, if we are if you think of the brain as a sponge and we're trying to wring out that sponge, we're trying to wring out that sponge, and we get frustrated maybe because our students aren't producing at the level that we thought that they might. And maybe they're frustrated with their own performance as well. So what I ask myself is, how much opportunity did I give them to get the input in before I asked them to take part in an activity to get the output out? So it could sum it up this way. You put the input in to get the output out. You put the input in and you work it all about. You focus on the meaning to acquire naturally. That's what it's all about. So, input to output. And I've created then, when I think of my language instruction, I think of it going into these stages. I want to make sure there's lots of opportunity for input, and then I'm going to scaffold and create the activities for the output where students are going to be successful. So I think of it in these four steps here. The setup is where I pre-teach some of the key vocabulary, maybe introduce them, expose them to some of the new structures that they'll be encountering in this unit. The setup now with content, I might need to provide them for a little bit of background knowledge because I can't assume that they have background knowledge on the target culture. The setup, and then I provide lots of listening activities, reading, and then into the writing and speaking. So I think of it this way. This is how I set students up for success in being able to communicate in a language. First, they need to hear it, then they need to read it. And I say hear it and understand it, read it and understand it. If they can hear it and understand it, read it and understand it, they've I've got the background set so they can write it and say it. Okay, so and if we can think of these and put them side by side with our actual modes of communication, now we know that we can work with these modes in any order when we create instruction, but for today and for this demonstration, I've chosen this sequence, starting out with some interpretive activities where our goal, our learning target, is to show comprehension of listening and reading. And I'm going to sprinkle in some interpersonal activities. Interpersonal, remember, is unrehearsed language, spontaneously, so that it could be either oral or written communication. And then finally, culminating with presentational activities where students create a polished product. So, how do we do that? I'm going to show you with demonstration. I'm going to show you with demonstration of how I get two for the price of one, world language knowledge and their skills at the same time. So this demonstration, you get to be in the seat of a language student today. As I've worked with teachers across the country, they've told me that these little demonstrations where they get to be in the learner's role is some of the most powerful professional development that they have. So I'm going to do that today. And I tell you, I'm more used to working with live sessions, even if it's on Zoom, with some live interaction. So this is just a recorded session. So just play along with me and actually respond to the recording. And I'm going to assume that you're responding, and I'm going to tell you that you're doing a good job. So have some fun. We're going to be learning that language I was singing at the very beginning. I don't know if you had a guess, I guess, at what language it is, but we're going to be learning a little Svenska. We're going to be learning a little Swedish. So, and don't worry, these lessons are designed assuming that you don't know anything about Swedish. It's the first day of Swedish class. But can I teach content from the very beginning? I'm not going to ask you to believe me. I'm going to show you. Okay, so let's go with the first step here in the input-output sequence. I'm going to start out by teaching you, pre-teaching you a little bit of the language. I'm going to prime the pump. I could do a song or some visuals, various different things. When I do full-day workshops, I do a variety of these different activities. Today, we're going to more jump in the water right away, given our time constraints. But I would do various different things. I would also, since this is a content, I'm working on two things, language and content. I'll talk about the content relevance and I'll check in a little bit with background knowledge. So the most common thing that I do, one of my favorite activities is to use a KWL chart. This in the lower levels, I will do this in English. In the upper levels, as your students are able, they can do it in the target language. And what a KWL chart is, it's there on the screen here if you're not familiar. Know what you want to know and what you've learned. So I take the topic, our topic today, we're going to be learning something about the geography of the Nordic region. where Sweden is located. So you could do this on your own, but more commonly, I have students in pairs or small groups. They jot down in the first column everything that they know on that topic. So if we were in person today, I'd put you in pairs and you would jot down, what do you know about Sweden or Scandinavia or the Nordic regions, the Nordic countries? The second column, what do you want to know? This is just a treasure for me as an instructor because then I get a little peek at what my students are interested in learning, and I can integrate some of that into the unit over the next few class periods. Then we set those aside. At the end of the unit, we pull out these same pages and those same groups of students fill in what they have learned. And so it's really reinforcing for the students because sometimes they're just not aware of how much they didn't know and how much they've learned as we're going through the unit. So this first demonstration is going to focus on the interpretive mode, meaning the learning goal is you need to show comprehension, and it's a listening activity. Now, if the goal is to show comprehension, that means I, as the teacher, I need to constantly be in the mode of doing a comprehension check because that's prime here. That is the most important thing right now. So I'm going to do a comprehension check by giving you some information, and then I'm going to pose questions. We'll all do a choral response. Okay, so if we're in person, of course, I can hear your response. If we're online, I have you also indicate your response. If it's a yes, if it's a no, if it's answer number one or answer number two of a multiple choice, or if it's a who, what, where question, I ask that. I pause for a moment, give you a chance to respond, and then I tell you the answer. So that's a continuous comprehension check strategy. You may have also heard these choral response questions called tiered questions or leveled questions or circling the questions because we stay at the same place and circle the questions around one piece of information. So here's a little background knowledge here. The Nordic countries. These are the Nordic countries. These 5 countries, that's what we're going to be talking about. Technically, Scandinavia is just that peninsula with Sweden, Sweden and Norway. But the Nordic countries are all 5 of these. Okay, so it's going to be a listening activity. I'm going to give you a piece of information, and then I'm going to ask you a question to work it into your sponge, and you respond. So listening comprehension is our goal, and learning the new content is also the goal. Okay, so here. Okay, god morgon. Välkommen till geografi. Välkommen till geografi. Ja, det finns 5 länder i Norden. Det finns, there are 5 countries in the Nordic region. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. So I'll ask you, finns det 5 länder i Norden? Ja eller nej? Ja, det finns 5 länder i Norden. Yes, there are 5 countries in the Nordic region. Ja, finns det 4 länder i Norden? Nej, det finns 5 länder i Norden. Okej, det är Norge. Norge är ett land. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Island. Now that looks like island, and it is an island, but that's the name for Iceland. Island, Danmark, Norge, Sverige, Finland. 5 länder. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Mm-hmm. Oh, titta på. Oh, look at this. Oh, titta på. Det Norge. Det Norge. Oh, so vackert, so beautiful. Det Norge. Det Norge? Ja, det Norge. Oh, titta, look at this. Titta på Sverige. Det Sverige. Det Sverige? Ja, det Sverige. Sverige eller Norge? Sverige. Ja, det Sverige. Oh, titta på Island. Oh, Island så vackert. Island. Oh, Danmark. Oh, det Danmark. Danmark så vackert. Danmark så vackert. Ja, Norge, Sverige, Norge, Sverige, Finland, Danmark och Island. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Peka på, point to actually touch the screen. Peka på Island. Peka på Finland. Peka på Sverige. Peka på Norge. Peka på Danmark. Comprehension check. Content. Peka på Sverige. Oh, there we go. Peka på Sverige. Peka på Danmark. Peka på Island. Peka på Finland. Peka på Norge. Ja, bra! Bra! Okay. Norge? No, Sverige. Sverige ett land. Sverige ett land. Peter, what does that mean? Sverige ett land. It's a country. Yes, Sverige ett land. Sverige ett land? Yeah, Sverige ett land. It's a country, a nation. Okay. Dalarna. Okay, all of this is Sverige. This is just part of Sverige. Dalarna. Dalarna ett landskap. Ett landskap. Vad betyder landskap? Region. Bra. Dalarna ett landskap? Ja, Dalarna ett landskap. Dalarna ett land? Nej, Dalarna inte ett land. Sverige ett land. Dalarna ett landskap. Okej, Dalarna ett landskap i Sverige. Mora. Mora en stad. En stad. Mora en stad. Vad betyder en stad? A city. Bra. Mora en stad. Mora en stad? Ja, Mora en stad. Mora ett land? Nej, Mora inte ett land. Mora en stad. Mora en stad. In fact, Mora en stad i Dalarna. Mora en stad i Dalarna. It's, yeah, a city in Dalarna. Bra. Mora en stad i Dalarna. Sverige är ett land. Dalarna är ett landskap. Dalarna är ett landskap i Sverige. Mora är en stad. Mora är en stad i Dalarna. Dalarna är ett landskap i Sverige. Sverige är ett land i Europa. Sverige är ett land i Europa. Ja, ja. Vad är det? Vad är det? What's in the box? I don't know what it is. Vad är det? Vad är det? Det är Stockholm. Stockholm, det är Stockholm. Stockholm är Sveriges huvudstad. Huvudstad, huvud is a head. So it's the head city, the capital city. Är Sverige Stockholms huvudstad? Ja, Stockholm är Sveriges huvudstad. Vad är Sveriges huvudstad? Stockholm. Ja, Stockholm är Sveriges huvudstad. Oh, Reykjavik. Reykjavik är Islands huvudstad. Oslo är Norges huvudstad. Stockholm är Sveriges huvudstad. Helsinki, or as they say in Swedish, Helsingfors. Helsingfors är Finlands huvudstad. Und Köpenhamn och Köpenhamn är Copenhagen. Köpenhamn är Danmarks huvudstad. Ja. Titta på. Titta på. Titta på Reykjavik. Är så vackert, så beautiful. Det är Oslo. Oslo är så vackert. Stockholm är så vackert. Helsingfors är så vackert. Köpenhamn är Danmarks huvudstad. Köpenhamn är så vackert. Var ligger Reykjavik? Peka på, point to it. Var ligger. Oh, what's that asking? Where? Var ligger, where is it located? Var ligger Reykjavik? I Island. Reykjavik ligger i Island. Var ligger Helsingfors? Helsingfors ligger i Finland. Var ligger Oslo? Oslo ligger i Norge. Bra! Var ligger Köpenhamn? Danmark. Köpenhamn ligger i Danmark. Var ligger Stockholm? Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Bra! So we did a listening activity where I focused on teaching new content, language acquisition, and doing both at the same time. Okay, now we're going to go on to the reading step. I'm going to put the reading on the screen here, and you might want to pause the video and just take some time to see how much you can understand. Now, there's some words in here that I never introduced. You may get them from context, or you can just skip over them. So I'll leave this up here for a moment, but I suggest you just pause the video, and then when you restart, I'll put it to the next slide which will have the English translation. But take a moment to see how much you can catch from this. And there's the English. Okay, so if you want to go back and forth there, I'll give you a chance to just read it and see how much you were able to get from the content in a brand new language. There's the reading again. And you can go back and forth. So when I've done this in person with people, the response is always like, I can't believe I can really get this. I just started learning Swedish like a few moments ago, and I can read a little content paragraph. Okay, välkommen till Sverige. Welcome to Sweden. Okay, and so then I would follow up with, and these are things that I do in my classroom. In when I do full day workshops with teachers, we actually experience this. You experience it as a student, and actually go through all of these steps. But I'll walk you through them, and of course, on the recording, you can pause the video and take notes as you want. Okay, the next step I always do handwritten notes. This is radical in the in here in 2025, handwritten notes. I require that all of my students in all of my language levels have a little notebook here, and I model handwritten written notes. They don't know how to take notes, they don't know how to organize information, and so I model it for them, and we take notes in the target language. So for this type of a lesson, we're just taking the English, and oh, it's blanked out there. English is on the other side, so we just write the notes and we write the um, English meaning for them. And so then they can use these to study from. I use this as an opportunity to just note that, like, oh, note the two dots over the letter A. That makes this kind of a sound or that kind of a sound without going into all kinds of details about the phonetics. What does that sound like? I'll say it for you. What does it sound like? Then we go into the writing and the speaking. And when we get into the output, I tell my students, right now you've got Swiss cheese Swedish. You've got some Swedish, but it's full of holes. Okay, so that our goal, and that's natural. That's a natural process of language acquisition. Our goal is to just fill in the gaps, and we do that by more exposure, more activities, by working with the language more and more. As I create output activities, I'm very aware of the scaffolding. I think of the tasks that I'm asking my students to do, and I challenge them to uh, do a task as complex as I feel they're ready to do. Or this is where I differentiate the instruction. Sometimes students are ready to take on some more complex tasks, and others are not quite ready yet, and so I can give them a simpler task. What I mean by a simple task, just make a list of words, do a Venn diagram, choose words that you're given a word bank and complete the sentence. You have some sentence starters or some templates to a dialogue, and you work at it to fill it in. More complex tasks, you write the sentences. Maybe you can use some resources, but you need to write the whole sentence. And open-ended could be use the vocabulary, and now you've learned the vocabulary to talk about geography, talk about places that you know, talk about some other countries and capitals and where they are located. Talk about where things are located in a city, whatever. And the learner support, I decide uh, how much support do my students need in order to increase the probability that they're going to be successful in the activity that I'm giving them today. Do they need lots of support? So that means, can you work with partners? Can you look back at the original text? Can you look back at your notes? Am I going to provide a word bank? all of these types of things. What kind of support am I going to give? Or do I withhold support and you're working totally independently on your own? I can vary the task difficulty and the support to mix and match and create the activity that my students are successful with. If I find, and I bet this has happened to you too, you give an activity to your students, you walk around and they're all kind of like they don't know what to do, they're all lost, they're not able to get going. We pull the group all back together and I add some support. Let's create a word bank together. Let's start with a couple of models together. That's what I mean by scaffolding. So, typical thing that I do after to follow up a little reading is I write comprehension questions. Those questions that you heard me use out loud orally all during my lesson presentation, I have those in written form. Now, these are just yeah, nay, yes, no questions. In other words, they're true, false. So here the students have a chance to input the information. They're getting the language and they're getting another more practice with the content. And so, but it's in a different modality. Instead of hearing it, they're reading it. Okay, also with the choral response, there's one downside of the choral response, and that is if a student needed just a moment to think. I asked the group a question and suddenly everybody else all around me just says the answer. Oh, it's kind of discouraging. Here I can work at my own pace. I can look up a word, I can ask a partner, I can go back to my notes, I can figure it out, I can take the time that I need. Using any of these activities that are just the things we've been doing in classrooms ever since the whenever. Finishing the sentences. Okay, but here, in order to do a little activity like this, I provided a word bank. I started doing that a lot. I used to think that, oh, I didn't want to provide the word bank because, I wanted students to work at it and, they should figure it out. And then I realized that if I provide the word bank, it really makes it accessible to all of my students. And my high flyers who don't want or don't, need a word bank, they don't look at it and they challenge themselves. And so, there we go. But imagine doing this as a language learner now, having the word bank or not. Okay, doing things like that. What about vocabulary quizzes? Okay, I might just, since my goal is comprehension, a pop quiz might just look like this, where they get the word in the target language and then they just give me the English word. That's how I do some formative assessments. And I choose the words that I've been working on again and again and again, that I've been focusing on with all of the repetition. There aren't trick words in here. So I'm hoping that everybody in the class can get 10 out of 10. And I do get lots of 10s, lots of 9 out of 10. And so that gives a good read for me if students are comprehending and retaining the information. So this is for comprehension of the interpersonal. Okay, here's another content knowledge assessment. In order to do a multiple choice item like this, do you have to understand the language? Yes. Do you have to know the content? Yes. So that's how I'm assessing both language and content at the same time. So those are various different things that I have been doing to work on, getting more repetition of the content and the language. So here's a great thing that I found. Some of you may be aware of this. There's a website called jeopardylabs.com. It's free. There is a subscription one, but level, but I haven't found that I needed it. Although I did hear from a teacher that some of the tools that in the subscription level are worth it. But what I loved was finding out that you can make Jeopardy games from scratch. So you can type in the target language, the answers, the questions. And here, now 5 by 5 is the typical Jeopardy grid, but I even simplified it to just a 3 by 3. And this was with my beginning language students. So I just made a who, a what, and a where column. So they knew how to start out the question. So it's practice informing questions, but they've already got the first word going for them. So that's how I start with geography at the very beginning lessons. But here are some ideas for bringing geography into your classroom. Um, Build awareness of global locations. That's so important. Our students are kind of lost in time and space. As you're doing a story or you're talking about an event, go to a map. Take a moment, go to a map, and use some of the strategies that I did with the questioning to just start presenting some of the uh, location awareness. Make a connection between geography and daily life. Where a country is located, that affects the climate, so that affects the food, the building design, the clothing, the daily routine. So all of those things that you're typically doing in an early level class, you can easily make geographic connections with them. If you're doing talking about a person's life or some event, the geography gives you some background knowledge for understanding historical and current events. Famous landmarks, these are some pieces of cultural knowledge that students need to know along with learning the vocabulary and the grammar. What resources come from that area, from that region? Because the resources that are available, depending upon that climate, if it's a coastal country or mountain climate or whatever, that affects the resources and that affects the products. We're always talking about the products, the practices, and the perspectives. Well, geography is the background knowledge to understanding why they produce what they do. Um, Maybe there's some climate changes in the areas where the language is spoken. What about relationships to bordering nations or the position where they're located affects how they are positioned into the global marketplace? So geography, starting and I thought, boy, what a dream it would be for my fourth year students to get those students if they had had all these years adding some pieces of background knowledge all along the way. What a difference that would make as I teach my upper levels. Do another quick demonstration here. This one is going to be an interpretive that will lead into an interpersonal activity. Okay, so um, a little background information here. The content relevance is remember that there's a region of Sweden called Dalarna. So here we're going a little bit of svensk kultur. Svensk kultur. Okay, brought a little friend in class to class with me. This is called a dala horse in English. A dala horse. In Swedish, it's called a dala häst. Okay, and it is a dala häst is one of Sweden's symbols. So here we go. En dala häst en häst av trä. Of trä. You can see, look at the picture. What's it made out of? Yeah, you got it. En dala häst kommer från Dalarna. What does that sound like? What does that sound like? Yeah, it comes from. That's exactly what it means. En dala häst kommer från Dalarna. Vad är det? Vad är det? What's this? Det är en dala häst. Två dala hästar. Tre dala hästar. Tre juldala hästar. Christmas ones. Fyra dala hästar. Hur många dala hästar? Fyra dala hästar. Ett, två, tre, fyra. Fyra dala hästar. Fem dala hästar. Ett, två, tre, fyra, fem. Fem dala hästar. Hur många dala hästar? Fem dala hästar. Hur många dala hästar? Whoa, I don't know. Många, lots and lots of them. Många dala hästar. Det finns många dalahästar i Sverige. Hmm. Vad betyder? There are many Dala horses in Sweden. Yeah, bra, bra. Okay, I'm assuming you're answering me there. Okay, let's look at some of them. Yeah, and Dala has kop, and Dala has boek, and Dala has leksak, and Dala has kude, and Dala has furta, Dala has strumpor, Dala has goodies, en liten dalahäst, en liten dalahäst. En stor dalahäst. Liten dalahäst, en stor dalahäst. Oh, en liten dalahäst och en stor dalahäst. Ja, en liten dalahäst och en stor dalahäst. Ja. Oh, en dalahäst i Shanghai, China. Oh, yeah, at the World's Fair. Yeah. En dalahäst är Sveriges symbol i världen. It's his whole symbol to the world. Okay, so again, I could follow that up with an interpretive reading that I'll put on the screen here for a little bit. Might want to pause, might want to read that, or just at least see how many words you can pick out. Okay, so pause it, give a chance to do that. And then I'll show you the answer now. There it is. Okay, so are you catching some of it? Are you catching some cognates? Are you finding some of those familiar words? What happens in things like that when I teach like this, though? But what happens to the grammar? The question always comes up. But what about the grammar? What about the grammar? I let the grammar come up in context. The grammar comes up in context. So here we would look at the first lines that Sweden's symbol is a special horse, a horse. Hästen, in green here, hästen heter, the horse is called a Dala horse. So after we've been working with this, I know it's a demonstration, just like quickly coming at you. But that's how I would find just a little example here and just don't do all the grammar, the whole thing, and the verb conjugation, all over the place. Let's just look at this one little concept today. How you say and the. Okay, and hästen. So if I wanted to say book, how would I say a book? And book. How would I say the book? Take the word, catch it on the back, bookend. Okay, so I would give examples like that and just let the grammar pop up. Okay, so how can we integrate content into modeling a conversation that prepares my students to do interpersonal communication? Now, remember, if I want my students to do some unrehearsed dialogues, conversation, they need lots and lots and lots of input. They need to hear conversations. They need to read conversations. I speak a lot. I do a lot of modeling for my students. So I'll do a little prop talk right now where I'm going to model a conversation before I have my students start to play with the language and create their own, and then eventually be able to spontaneously use those phrases in unrehearsed situations. Okay, so, oh, good morgon! Good morgon! Oh, jag heter Jan. Jag heter Jan. Vad heter du? Sven. Sven! God morgon Sven, välkommen till svenska klass. Ja, jag bor i USA. USA. Jag bor i USA. That's where I live. Var bor du? Sverige. Oh, Sverige. Oh, jag bor i USA. Du bor i Sverige? Ja. Intressant. Intressant. Var i Sverige? Var? Where specifically? Dalarna? Oh, du bor i Dalarna? Du en Dalahest. That's why they call him a Dalahest. Because that's where he lives. That's where he's from. Dalahestin kommer från Dalarna. The Dala horse comes from Dalarna. Now, I need to give my students lots of input on the first and second person forms of question and answer. So here are some of the different ways that I do that. That's going to help them lead into being able to more successfully do interpersonal activities. Okay, they can read in the first person. Okay, you don't that font is too small for you to read. I just want you to see the setup of that page, that it's a speech bubble. So here the little Dala horse is speaking. Here's Sven den svenska Dalahästen, Sven the Swedish Dala horse. And there's a word bank there, and there's what he's talking about. In the first paragraph, he's talking about his family. In the second paragraph, he's talking about his relations in the United States, in the USA. Here are some other ideas for providing more input, so your students get lots of first and second person input into their sponges before I create an activity and ask them to use it. One is I provide prop talks. Okay, sometimes I talk to people on the screen. Sometimes I talk to imaginary people. I don't always have all the clip art and everything or the props ready to go. I just do something spontaneously. I talk to people who are stick people on the board that I draw. Doesn't matter, you don't have to be fancy. Okay, this is also another great way to make use if we have some heritage speakers in the classroom to do some model dialogues with them. Okay, reading written speech and talk bubbles. Listen to dialogues. Read dialogue transcriptions. Read journal entries written in the first person. Read letters or emails or text messages. They're frequently written in the first and second person. Listen to and read interviews or watch them or turn on the closed captioning so that you can hear the language and see the language at the same time. Okay, text message, social media, voicemails. Lots of ways to get input there. When I first start having students do some speaking, I think about the scaffolding. I think about the scaffolding here of, for example, here's a task, and my output strategy is just to provide sentence starters. Okay, this would be for my very beginning lesson here, but if I'm teaching another level, I would have I went to, or I would like to buy, or I would prefer that, or I think that. You can give some sentence starters for whatever level language that you're teaching. Okay, sentence starters, another output strategy that helps build students' success in their ability to do interpersonal activities is to provide some templates. So these are all practices where I actually give them the template and we talk about what it means, or they tell me what it means. I check with the comprehension. So they have these things to start with. Another thing that I've seen, I don't have a picture of them here, but they're called chat mats. Chat mats have, like a placemat, and has all kinds of different vocabulary ideas, some questions, some sentence starters, some different ways to answer the questions. So I think that's very helpful. When I was teaching an upper level, I had some materials once that um, would give us a situation like um, inviting somebody to do something and would have all kinds of different expressions like, are you free on? And then we would fit in, Tuesday morning, Saturday night, next week. What plans do you have for the summer, the weekend? We'd have all these templates and then possible answers. I'm free, or I would love to, but I have to work. I would love to, but my family's visiting grandma. I would love to, but yes. And then ask clarification questions. What time? Where should we meet? And so it kind of guides the students, guided conversation. Doing some of these before students are just like um, left, for just totally role play without any support. Other content that I can show you in the same way that I do geography, you can do history. You can do history anytime. So here's a little history lesson that I could do, just starting out with, and it doesn't matter that it's first year. It doesn't matter that it's first year and this is history because the word came is there. They don't have to know all the conjugations or if this is an irregular verb or little preterite or imperfect. They don't need to know all of that. It's just taught as a vocabulary word. Many Swedes came to America. Okay. And we learned earlier that Mora is a city in Dalarna. We can find that there's also Mora is a city in Minnesota. Okay, and then why? Well, because of the immigration. Then we can read about that. And in fact, in Mora, Minnesota, there's me by a mycket stor dalahäst, a very, very, very big dalahäst in Mora, Minnesota. So, and same with doing the readings on that. And then history and biography, beautiful content. And so bring history into your classroom. Think about this. What events have shaped the lives of the people who speak the target language? Historical events are just stories. There's a setting. Okay, like there was a setting. There was before the Berlin Wall, there was one country, then something happened, and then they built the wall. They lived as a divided country. Berlin was a divided city. Something happened, they tore the wall down, and now there's a legacy today. Okay, beginning, middle, end. They're just stories. You can see the word story is right in history. In second year, when we are just scratching our heads looking for stories to put our past tenses into context to teach them, why not teach some historical events so they can use content, learn content at the same time they're learning acquiring their new um, grammar structures. Okay, history is great because there's a focus, it has a narrow focus on third person, singular and plural. It's just a natural combination of the past tenses. Um, and then once you study one or two historical events, there's high frequency vocabulary that keeps coming up again and again, and it gets easier and easier. There's just really, I listed them, there's just like 25 verbs, and you can tell historical event. They came, they discovered, they conquered, they built, they founded, somebody composed, they started, they began, they composed, they painted, they led, very few things. So you start to get some high frequency history vocabulary. Biographies are stories of people's lives, stories of people's lives. And so Alfred Nobel, okay, the way biographies start, okay. Well, yeah, he was born in this time in this place. Very easy to, like here, you've got some great vocabulary chunks here, was born on this date. You can step out from that and ask people, what year were you born? What's your birth date? Using that same vocabulary, but you can jump out and do personalized questions. So you learn to tell the story of someone's lives. Think about it. Who are the movers and the shakers in the target cultures? Biographies are simply, again, they're stories, and you get high frequency vocabulary. Okay, presentational. Well, with all of this modeling of little short snippets, culture capsules, if you will, or little biographies, or histories, the students, if they get that modeled and modeled and modeled, it will be, they can use those models as guides to create their own, to create their own. And so, and then present them to class or create some kind of a polished, finished product. So bring it back to your classrooms. Okay. Interpretive. Um, read totally comprehensible texts written for language learners or add authentic resources for deeper cultural exposure. You know, sometimes there's controversy which kind of text to use. I use both. They both have different learning targets and for different purposes. Interpersonal. Use topics from the content to jump off into personalized discussions. Role play characters from a biography or historical story. Presentational. Students research and create their own presentations or polished written products using models as the guide. So I have a vision that in addition to what we do currently, especially at the first and second level, that we begin to identify, describe people, places, and things from all over the target speaking world. And when we're in second year, when we're doing past tenses, to start learning some key historical events that shape the lives of the target culture today. So where do I find the stories? Well, geography, that's a story there. History is a story. Biography is a story. Stories in art and music. The news has stories. Okay, your own stories from your own travels. All of these come about. But I suggest to get going on this, rethink any lesson that you're currently doing, but think of it in terms of those 4 steps that I gave you of setting it up, then doing listening, and then reading, and then follow up with the output activities. Think of the sponge, the input to better quality output. So teach culture-related content in the target language. You get target language proficiency and target cultural knowledge. You get 2 for the price of 1. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit of Swedish today, and that you can take some of these ideas to bring back to the classroom. I wish you well at the start of the new school year, and that I gave you some food for thought and some good practical strategies that you can put into place. Here's my contact information. So I would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, contact me directly and I will answer them. And I do answer my own email. It doesn't go into some general box. So do stay in contact. And I would love to hear about what is happening in your classroom and how I can help you and the other teachers in your department create an exceptional language program. Thank you so much for joining me here today.